Greetings, Lazarus, 18th of December. Just gone 9 p.m. here where I am in just outside Lilongwe in Malawi. Forgive me. Arrived here yesterday, having sailed back from the Likoma island off the coast of Mozambique, where I was for 5 days. And I have to say, 5 of the most idyllic days of my somewhat idyllic life. I don't think I've ever experienced such an extraordinary island setting. It's exactly what you would think would pop out of a kind of Disney, no, let's not go there, a Pixar film. Just stunning. And we had been scouting for many months land for the New Earth sanctuary, residential healing sanctuary for the Malawi Africa Initiative. The New Earth Initiative in Malawi, forgive me. Although the Likoma Island is just off the coast of Mozambique, it's actually in the center of, not in the Lake Malawi, which is technically, it's regarded as an inland sea. It's vast. It took a day and a half to sail from the coast of Malawi to the island. And to those of you who are watching some of my intermittent feed, you'll know that it was an odyssey from hell to sail there. The boat, an almost 100-year-old boat called the Lala, is the only ship on this inland sea that for over 3/4 of a century has been ferrying souls around the coastline. It's also known, incidentally, Lake Malawi, as the Calendar Lake, because it's 365 miles long. It's 52 miles wide. It's fed by 12 rivers, so it kind of corresponds almost perfectly to the calendar. And there's one big island just off the coast of Mozambique, which is on the other side of the lake. And this paradise place. Spent time there, met the chiefs, and locked down our plans to establish the New Earth Sanctuary in Malawi there on the Likoma Island, and then had to sail back again another day and a half. This time with, we discovered 777 black souls crushed onto the ship that is supposed to take, I think, about 300. It was absolutely terrifying. Boarding the ship, you have to scale up the side of the ship off a fishing boat kind of deal and claw your way through an ocean of bodies trapped in the lower deck of the ship. Honestly, it was redolent of the old slave trade. And please do not take me wrong, beautiful people of Malawi. I'm not being insulting, but it was just the most extraordinarily dangerous, in a sense, and challenging journey that I've ever made. And I've traveled the world for 30 years, been every remote corner imaginable, other than Patagonia and Antarctica. And I've never been in a situation where I genuinely thought, I don't know that I can handle this. Nonetheless, got through that ocean of black, beautiful people crammed in the lower deck and was pulled up the stairwell to get to daylight, and then sailed, and a storm hit us. Of course, a storm hit us. And it was a lightning thunderstorm, and we absolutely should have tanked. And this should be my obituary. But we got to the other side, and then drove hell for leather to get here to this bush lodge where I am, the only place we could find with outstanding Starlink. So that was in my commitment to getting here for Lazarus. And tomorrow morning early, we head off back into the bush to Zambia. And we'll stay in another lodge tomorrow night. Then the following day, Lusaka, last meetings in Zambia, tying up the New Earth Zambia initiative, which, as those of you who are following what we're doing in Africa, is pioneering and historic in equal measure. And when we make the formal public announcements in the first quarter of next year, I think it might make top line news, because it's so extraordinary what we're doing. It's so beautiful, and so many wonderful souls are connected to how we're building this economy, how we're building this multilateral initiative in the cradle of civilization, in the chakra, the kind of sacral chakra of Africa. So mission almost accomplished. When I'm land in Europe in the next few days, I'll know exactly how successful it's been. But that's my little update in 5 minutes on what I've been up to in the 6 or 7 country odyssey that we've just done in the last 3 weeks in Africa, all on the lateral plane on road. I didn't want to take any bush planes. I really wanted to do that kind of mythic piece where you bring your body temple to the land and you commune with the land, no matter what that terrain brings you, or water brings you in this case. And I'm glad I did that, because I really feel like I've touched this part of Africa, which, curious enough, is where I was born and where I grew up in the war in then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, which is just a stone's throw from here. So for me, a kind of beautiful full circle piece. And I'm on my own personal Lazarus resurrection from the dead journey, as are all of us. And for sure, the thousands of people watching this, you are all very much on that journey, which is what unites this beautifully conscious community. So welcome to our 50, I don't remember which number it is. Let me just check my notes. It is the 54th Symposium of the Lazarus Initiative in 5 years, and going from strength to strength. Today's opening forum is with beautiful souls who I'm very blessed to count as colleagues and friends. We're discussing, and this, as you will know, is the second and closing piece on Atlas. Atlas Rising, Decoding the Interstellar Signal, Structure, Perception, and the Great Unfolding, with David Srida, George H. Lewis, Birdie Jaworski, and Jenny Lee. So let me bring my beautiful guests on. Jenny Lee, you're first up. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Now you'll have to unmute.
Hi, how are you?
Very good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Birdie, you're next up. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you as well.
Good to see you, Sacha.
Yay. George H. Lewis, sir, you look as though you're in Colombia.
Gosh, you must be psychic.
Well, you and I are doing better than both Jenny and Birdie, that's for sure.
No, I don't think I can beat you. I mean, your story is quite exceptional, I must say. You make my mouth drool with anticipation.
And lastly, but not leastly, our beloved frequency guru and veteran Lazarus, founding Lazarus veteran member, David Srida. David, lovely to see you.
Great to be here, Sacha.
Good stuff. And tell us you're freezing in Canada, one, and secondly, to make George and I feel even better, and secondly, explain kindly that glowing orb over your left shoulder.
Well, firstly, the glowing orb over my left shoulder is part of a crystal transmitting network. So I have 300 feet of wire connecting my transmitting coil systems to big cedar trees and a big mother spruce tree down the hill. So I'm using trees as antennas as 3i Atlas is coming by, and I'm sending it signal messages. And in fact, yesterday in the morning at about 7 a.m., I was finishing my weekly webinar on 3i Atlas, and a massive golden lightning bolt struck the area and everything went black. And it turns out it was one of the biggest outages. We don't get lightning storms in the winter here. In Montana, eastern Washington, hundreds of thousands of people lost power, all the way up into northern BC. Hundreds of thousands of people lost power in a single second when I was saying the words that the measurements and the angles need to be perfect according to the grand designer, and boom, on the word perfect, it all went down. So everybody in Washington State and Montana and British Columbia, all the way to Vancouver, this doesn't happen. Like, power doesn't go out synchronistically over a large network like that. And this gets really, really deep. I mean, I could show you maps of the outage, but I think it was 3i Atlas, because that's what I was talking about. And I'm communicating through this vast system of the mycelium. So in the mycelium, which is the largest single living organism on the earth, is how the trees are all interconnected over these vast distances. So once you transmit into them, which is harmonic, I don't use single frequencies, I use harmonics, and I'm sending in the harmonics of what 3i Atlas is showing us, which is the hyperdimensional solar system. So it knows what I'm sending it. And I don't want to blame myself for the outage, but I think it's a synchronistic moment where I was timed perfectly for this to happen.
Thank you. So everyone, you can blame David Sarita for the outage.
For the outage.
And that beautiful intro is what you get when you have the physicist, inventor, and frequency guru whose work bridges quantum mechanics and harmonic resonance. And for those of you who've been asleep at the wheel for the last few months of Lazarus Symposium, George H. Lewis is the astrologist, cosmologist, and mythic analyst of the human soul. He specializes in planetary cycles, archetypal thresholds, and the symbolic language through which cosmic events mirror collective transformation. And Bertie Jaworski is the professional remote viewer and intuitive investigator known for disciplined sessions that often later align with empirical data, meaning to say she speaks the truth and she sees through things. Bertie has previously shared imagery related to Atlas that was later corroborated visually. And Jenny Lee, or Jenny Sight, is seer and multidimensional perceptual translator, and she received impressions and visual downloads related to 3i Atlas as early as 2022, long before it became any kind of a talking point, interpreting phenomena through function, process, and environmental interaction rather than object-based form. Now, that said, the introduction to this panel goes something like this. In our first conversation, we explored Atlas as an object, or perhaps as something far more complex than merely an object. But since then, new images, new data, and new interpretations have intensified the conversation, and not just scientifically, but psychologically, symbolically, and perceptually. So tonight's conversation is not about escalating any fear or forcing conclusions on this very enigmatic phenomenon. It's about how we are observing, how meaning is being assigned, and what this moment may be revealing, not only about Atlas, but about all of us. So each of our panelists bring forward distinct material, observational, intuitive, symbolic, and perceptual. And we'll begin by giving each of them, the royal we, I'll begin by giving each of them space to share their insights directly before widening the lens to the larger implications now unfolding, which brings me back to you, David, if you don't mind being the veteran here, on observation, participation, and quantum contact. In your recent writing on Medium, you've emphasized that observation itself changes the equation, and that when we observe something like Atlas, we're no longer separate from it. So with the imagery showing consistent angles, structured emissions, and non-gravitational behavior, how does quantum observer participation change the way we should interpret what we're seeing? Are we studying an object or interacting with a process?
Well, somehow I'm getting all these goosebumps, Sasha, as you were saying that. It's going right through my knees. I mean, that article focuses on the dialogues between Krishnamurti and physicist David Bohm, who discovered mathematically the implicate and explicit order, which is the harmony of the order of the internal human being interfacing with the external cosmic human being. And when a human reaches cosmic consciousness, I mean, again, I've been meditating my whole life. When you get into this supreme halo of the 1,000,000 petaled lotus flower awakens in the crown chakra, you enter the consciousness of cosmos. And the consciousness of cosmos is what happens at the master levels of meditation, which is why the ancient Egyptians were deeply immersed in the harmony of the order of the heavens, where we go in the afterlife. In fact, even Jesus, Isa, Yeshua is communicating the language that he's so certain of where this paradisical heaven is, he's not afraid to lose his physical existence, obviously, because he's so affirmative that he actually has his cosmic eye upon it. And so that's why when we look at a cosmic event, we know this in the implicate order of an explicate order of David Bohm and Krishnamurti's, synergy, if you will, that the moment we observe something in the quantum level, the wave function actually collapses, which means the membrane that seems to separate the egoic self, the myopic egoic self from cosmos, and the quantum vanishes, and we become one. And when you become one, you're actually feeling it. So when you look at 3i Atlas, as soon as we observe it, we're part of it. In fact, I did this study in the last week on how much electrical energy, you wouldn't believe this, how much energy is radiating off a single human being is enough to light 14 10-watt light bulbs. Most of that energy in the form of infrared heat, which radiates mostly off the chest. And in fact, in Sedona, once I put on these military night vision goggles, and when I looked at my wife's chest, it almost blinded me. I had to tear the goggles off my head. That's how much light is coming off of us. Now, if you multiply that by 8 billion persons and the total amount of power, and I asked ChatGPT to do the calculations for me, how much would that beam of energy, how far would it travel? So if you sent that energy through a single monopole antenna, which transmits in all directions, the effective radial distance that we can reach happens to be Pluto. But if you focus the transmission, which means it becomes coherent, the single human being has enough energy to reach any of the local stars like Sirius, Alpha Centauri, and in fact, even as far as Vega, depending on how coherent your light becomes. But when you multiply, I did this mathematically, so this isn't like a psychic kind of thesis. It's actually measured. It turns out the total collective amount of energy. So that means if we could get humanity to focus together and stop being completely scattered, we collectively have enough energy in a focused beam as an effective transmission to cross the galaxy. So that can't be a coincidence. So that means if enough of us are focusing on 3i, third eye Atlas, as I like to call it, then we actually start to get a reaction, interaction, symbiosis between us. So when somebody's remote viewing this, it's not science fiction. It's really happening. It really is. So with that, yesterday when I was in my webinar at literally they're 1 hour long webinars. So the timing was at the exact end of the webinar. I was saying how the grand organizing designer God, the master architect, designed everything to be mathematically and the angles perfect. Upon the word perfect, there was a flash of light and this power outage which spanned all the way into Montana, eastern Washington, all the way up to the north of British Columbia, all the way to Vancouver in the same moment in time. And for several minutes after, was taking out hundreds of thousands of people's power, which lasted about 3 hours. So the synchronicity of that, and I'm talking about Atlas, is kind of what I'm talking about. The human light bulb is, if it's non-focused, right, we have enough light to reach Pluto. And then effectively, and then our light fades into what's called the background noise of the universe. But if you're focused and you really focus your beam, a single person can reach any of the local star groups. So that means a remote viewer, which is focusing, is really doing this. It's incredible.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, let me move on to Birdie on updated remote viewing and corroboration. I'm hoping, incidentally, that we've managed to fix your audio problem. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. I am
Thank
here.
Thank God. So we need to show a brief clip from your earlier session referencing the
Yes.
diamond-like structure. So I'll leave that to Christy to queue up. But Bertie, your earlier remote viewing described a diamond-like geometry, something that later appeared echoed in observational imagery. But since
Yes.
that session, what new information have you received, and has your understanding of Atlas evolved in terms of structure, intent, or function, and how do you now contextualize what you first perceived?
I have
Did you
so
hear
much.
about this lady who remote viewed 3-Eye Atlas, and she drew a picture of it like months ago, and it looked just like 3-Eye Atlas? She drew this picture months ago before we had any pictures. But what she said during her remote viewing, I think everybody needs to hear. So I found a video and I broke it down to make it easy to hear. Listen to what this lady is saying.
Green,
then tell me at
red,
the end what you think.
Energetic, rolling, rolling, rolling. That is going to be the theme, but there's something about my birthday. It's December 7th. This thing is the most important thing. You see in the sky with diamonds. This is the most important thing I need to know. Technology, sending something out. Whatever it sent out, Earth got it. Earth got the message. They don't understand it. It's a frequency that gives you dreams. Gives you dreams, ideas, or a memory of something you could never have known. Like a warning beacon, isn't it? It's a warning beacon. It's an echo, like a lighthouse, like a lighthouse. It's a warning beacon, like a lighthouse.
So the lady who accurately predicted 3-Eye Atlas is saying that it's a warning beacon that alters your dreams and gives you vision and memories of things you are not supposed to know. That sounds exactly like what's happening. I've been trying to tell everybody that these vivid dreams are a test. It's like, this is the judgment. The dreams, they're so vivid right now because there's a frequency being sent to your mind, testing you, evolving you, teaching you, seeding you in the world and the universe with ancient wisdom, like technology. Yeah, that's definitely not a comment. But what do you think is happening? Are you getting vivid dreams, or is that thing just a comment? Or maybe God's coming back, or are we being invaded? Did you hear about this?
And here she is.
Oh, hey, Sasha. I'm so glad to be here today to talk to everyone here. Yeah, that's what I got on July 31st, which was before even 3 Atlas was like a big thing. So I was getting this information at that time. But since then, my information has evolved. And I have sent this out to so many of my students to remote view, so many people who are professional remote viewers, and they're all getting the same thing. This is a natural astronomical object. Absolutely. It is an actual kind of comet in a way, but with a twist, there is something that has been imparted to this object that's trying to awaken us, that's trying to bring us into this whole new era. And I'm just so excited with what's happening right now. I'm seeing so many people that are contacting me, telling me, yeah, they're getting messages too. And it's a really beautiful kind of thing. So let me know what you want to know. I'll tell you.
Very good, very good, very good. Thank you. Okay, Jenny, perception, process, and environmental interaction. So the primary question to you is, you've been very clear that what people are sensing may not be a craft at all, but a stabilizing process interacting with Earth's system. So using the images and step-by-step framework that you've shared, can you walk us through why different people are perceiving the same phenomenon so differently, and how fear, narrative, and nervous system filtering shape those interpretations?
Because the main thing about this is it's your veil of understanding. So if you do an interpretation in space and you refresh it towards Earth, what you've experienced on Earth, that's the experience you're going to get. If you always say to yourself, show me your original form, I will accept whatever form that is without a fear process whatsoever, it'll show you its original form. But the form is elusive. You're not. This is energy frequency. And I have some pictures that so it gives you an understanding of how this works. So
Great.
this is how going to affect Earth's core. And this is how it goes to the planet. And this is the inside of it. So it's always here. It's already affecting the planet on everything, every basis of the planet in the Earth's core. So we are podiums of light, of energy, and that is how it's affecting us. And this is the problem on one side of this is the people that have not been doing their work, not been enlightened by energy or frequency. It's going to confuse them when this hits Earth. It already is. You're seeing that process, but this is going to change. It's going to affect the ley lines. It's going to affect the pyramids. And Spirit told me, look outside and look at the planet in a clear view. And I see all this activity on the outside of the Earth that it's happening. So how is this affecting us? It's upgrading us, but we are not looking at it, and it has to be in a 3D concept whatsoever. So what's happening is you're accepting it as the original form, the original energy that hits you, and it has your own DNA of understanding. It's going to affect you, and then it goes right to your conscience, goes back to memory that you had before. It's familiar. The energy is familiar to you. And so you're going to walk through that and feel comfortable about it if you have been in line to listen and walk in this frequency for a long time. A lot of us have been on a mission for a long time to understand this frequency. The calling, this is the calling. We are podiums of light that are turning on. The planet's on, the ocean, and Antarctica, the pyramids, everything is turning on. And so now we are the diamonds in the sky, and we are in an active mode in this process. So what it's doing is it's coming down now into the core of the Earth, and it's reactivating Earth again in the frequency of a barrier. So what they say, and they always told me, that the dark will be dust again because it will not survive in that frequency. And that's like scary to a lot of people, but dark and light do not come together on a frequency like this. You have to survive into that light frequency of that level of understanding. And so the darkness will not have nothing to work off. It can't use the loosh or anything. It will dissolve or it will hide. And that's what they're showing me. So what's going to happen to our world as you guys are seeing the dreams and you're understanding you're getting stuff, but you think it's new and it's not. You're going back to your old memory of what your soul originally came from. It's memory from a long time ago that you already know how to get into this energy. So 3D is just one concept of that, but that is dissolving. 3D is dissolving in front of us. And you can feel that you don't feel like anything is real anymore. It's losing its power. It's losing its grip. So this whole world is turning on in energy and frequency. We are changing. So you don't want to look at it as a physical process. You want to look at it as energy, and it's coming in waves, and it's affecting animals, the ocean, everything. It's here already. It's already affecting us already. And that's that demonstration where it shows you what it's doing. And you're just walking and feeling it. And the blitz, you can feel the harmony. You can feel the love that's changing on Earth. That's what's changing, is the love. You feel attached to things more than we did before. We know it's a collective of energy together. We can't do this alone. We have to come together as one in humanity across the board.
Very good. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, or fun to funky, if you listen to David Bowie in your misspent youth, as I did. Thank you for that. I want to follow up from your perspective, Jenny Lee. What practical guidance should viewers take from this, not philosophically, but physically and emotionally, as Earth is moving through this energetic window that you're describing?
Okay, so you have to stay in the stillness. And a still moment is the voice is inside you. So that is basically, you're looking at 3D and you're pushing it away, like it has no reality. When you sit in that stillness, you start to hear things within you that are aligning from the ground, from the sky, from the atmosphere. But then you see this calmness that takes over your soul because you're seeing it from two views, and you know you're not a part of that. It's the enslavement planet. And when you step back from that, it does not affect you. So what I'm saying is, how do you get there? I will tell you the number one I teach for a remote viewing and on any meditation, I put a blindfold on. Stop trying to see with these two eyes on this atmosphere. You have to go within the mind's eye and stay in there. Then you feel your whole body and soul transforms into a new process that's numb, and you understand colors and frequency and fog in a different way, and you're getting to that realm as it changes and it surfaces in a circle. And then you are not worried about, this is the biggest thing I think with other remote viewers and stuff, they're worried about being wrong. And if you just trust what's coming into your conscience and say it and speak it, you'll be surprised of how fast that information lays quickly. So most people are afraid of being wrong, and you're not. You say, is this really happening to me? Yes. We're at a different process in this world. And I'll tell you, like I said, with that pink fog that came in, and that was part of the process. But another part of the process is, I can tell you what's next, is the sun's going to change and beam. They see more of a bright yellow. Then that changed, and then the frequency actually side. It's all this. We're already in it. It's already coming. It's already here.
Beautiful. And I love what you're saying there. We're the ones that stand in our own way, in the sense, the way that we tend to filter out supra reality.
And out what?
Supra reality always hits us instantly. Like when we meet someone for the first time, the minute you set eyes on someone, that packet of information, that quanta of fire in the eyes, actually tells you everything you'll ever need to know about that individual. And in any relational dynamic, if you had your psionic intelligence was activated and you believed enough in the presence of being here now, and I think it's very important that you're reminding us of that we don't filter ourselves, that we start to believe, and remote viewers needing to believe what they are. That first instinct, that first impression is desperately important, but we tend to filter it out with misgivings and shadows and doubts and all the rest. I think it's a really important piece that. George, turning to you, thank you for your patience, brother. You suggested this great, in respect to the great unfolding that we're discussing, December 19th to the 20th, imminent. It's happening imminently. You suggested that this conversation needed to happen before December the 19th, what you've called the great unfolding. So from an astrological and archetypal standpoint, what shifts are converging during this window? And how does Atlas symbolically fit into a larger cycle that humanity appears to be crossing?
Well, I mean, 3i Atlas is now glowing gold, and David Soreda just mentioned about that gold color he was experiencing. So my own intuition really for this is drawing me back to the story of the birth of Christ. And for many years, when I listened and observed the three wise men following the star, I'd say to myself, what is a star? I always assumed it was the great conjunction of the two benefics, Jupiter and Venus, with maybe Mars there, which makes sense because you brought the great benefics together. And maybe it was, but I think it may be also something else. We're entering a conjunction of Sun, Moon, and Mars. I'll get into that in a minute, which is very, very poignant because it's great. It's a terrific rebuke against the criminal syndicate that's run the financial system since Babylonia. And there's a total spotlight on it because it's Mars is in exaltation in Capricorn. We have the Sun and the Moon together at 28 degrees Sagittarius tomorrow, December the 19th. But ultimately, I think this is an event that probably happened when we moved out of the age of Aries and into the age of Pisces. And 3i Atlas, to me, is coming in and supporting the planetary archetypes, but making it a much bigger conversation. I mean, I've started to think that 3i Atlas is connected to the timeline shift of 2016. Now, let me explain that, because that's a long time ago now. But my sense is that it first came into our outer solar system around 2016, 2017, which is for me when the timeline changed and it merged. I mean, you know, we always, Mrs. Clinton never wrote a failure speech because they thought they had it in the bag. And at that time, it was a conjunction with, I think, Sedna and then maybe Eris a bit later in 2017, 2018, which is right in our outer solar system. So now it's coming through on the ecliptic, passing all the planets. And each time it past Jupiter, it's in its exaltation. Passes Mars back at which rules Scorpio, and now it's in its exaltation in Capricorn. Venus was in her rulership of Libra. To me, that's not accidental. That's very specifically timing to activate our pineal gland, as David talks about 3i Atlas, the pineal gland, the activation of the pineal gland. This is really us stepping into a whole new way of being. It corresponds with 2025, which is 9 in numerology. We step into 2026 next year. In a few weeks' time, it becomes a 1. And this is really, truly the age of Aquarius. And we are going to experience such drastic changes on our planet that it's beyond even my own comprehension. And so you always ask about what's the practical implication? What can we do practically as opposed to just philosophically? It really is about stepping into that Christ message of the inner work. The Apocrypha always spelt it out that way. And a lot of the Bible pushed away the real inner journey work of the Christ archetype. And by shining a spotlight on the Mars, Sun, Moon conjunction, we're going to see the evisceration of the old banking system. We're going to see so many of us rise up. And then gold, we think of the golden color, the golden currency, gold and silverback. It's probably a segue into a whole new system. And I have great faith, because I understand the prophecy to a large extent. I don't say remotely that I understand it in its total complexity. It's enigmatic. It is amorphous. It is prophetic by definition. It's Neptunian. We can't get a total grasp on it, but because of one's faith in it, pulling away from those lower frequencies of inverted Saturn, which is fear, we open our heart and we access the light codes coming in. As we've discussed, the sun is of a different photonic light than when we were younger. And this is the ability for us to step into our homo luminous, and our spine literally begins to melt and we become crystalline. We lose the negative carbonite and we become the superhuman that we can. And that's the negatives will always invert that, the superhuman, by creating the transhuman. But for us, it's that Christed divinatory light codes that manifest within our body temple, and that's when we develop those superpowers. And I think that's on the menu in the coming months and years.
Beautiful, thank you. Birdie, I understand that you've spoken recently to Avi Loeb. Has she disappeared? No. Jenny, I'll bring Jenny in.
Hi.
What happened to Birdie? Is Birdie with us, Christy? No. It looks like her. That's fine. Her device dropped. I'll ask the question of her when she comes in, because I understand she spoke to Avi Loeb recently. So it'll be very interesting to hear what transpired in that conversation. Just turning this to the panel generally, December 19th marks Atlas's closest approach, with data pointing to persistent sunward anti-tails, unusual chemistry, steady radio emissions, and controlled acceleration. As observers from different disciplines, what feels most significant about this moment? Not sensationally, but structurally. David, let me ask that of you first.
Well, I have to do share screen to show you what it's really doing on the 19th, which is tomorrow. So this is immensely profound, what it's about to do. So, and what it's going to be doing throughout the holiday period. I'm just waiting for this share screen to come up. So here we go. So it's funny that George mentioned the 3 wise men, because the 3 most important angles.
I'm sorry, David. Christy, thank you, Christy. Just change that banner. Carry on, David.
The 3 most important angles that 3i Atlas is exhibiting in the heavens are the angles of the Giza Plateau. So here's the Great Pyramid here where my balloon is, and this is Peter Lemessuri's 26-degree angle to the east, where the sun and the ecliptic rise. But what we don't know is, even though this angle is the rising angle of the sun and the ecliptic on the summer solstice, inversely on the winter solstice, if you're at Bethlehem, Jerusalem temple, the sun sets at the 3 pyramids in Cairo, inversely. So now watch what 3i Atlas does. So when I compare my winter and summer solstice angles rising and setting, it equals the slope angle of the Great Pyramid, just under 52 degrees, which we can see in the yellow bands here, right? So Atlas is actually demonstrating this. This image was posted by Avi Loeb on the 29th of November. We can see this stream of dots in this angle which he believed were mini craft leaving 3I Atlas. But the angle between this line here and its jet angle, which is 26 degrees, is the slope angle of the Great Pyramid. In fact, it's giving us the Giza clock. Now, here's the 19th of December, which is tomorrow. So using a protractor, this is really exact. 3I Atlas to Earth is 64 degrees, but Earth to Atlas is 26 degrees, which is the Bethlehem angle and the angle of the mystery of the Giza Plateau, which is the same angle of the interior of the Great Pyramid's ascending and descending passages. So finally, it actually perfected this angle of 26 degrees taken by this amateur astronomer here. And putting my protractor on it, we can see what the message is, because we can see the Bethlehem 26.3 degrees, which is inversely at Bethlehem, which is about to happen on the winter solstice. The sun will set at the pyramids, which means the Jerusalem Jewish temple is intersecting at this angle with the Great Pyramid temple. Now, in the Dendera temple to the south at the Hathor temple, the goddess Hathor, you can see these what people thought were light bulbs, and they're actually tilted. I had a friend who's in my inner circle go there physically and measure them, and they are indeed 26 degrees. So they're doing what I'm doing. They're transmitting at this angle and receiving a cosmic actual energy as a spiritual exercise in the temple. And that's a huge subject in itself. So Christmas Day here, the exterior surface angle of the Great Pyramid is between 3I Atlas and Earth. That's December 25th. So then when we get to Orthodox Christmas, the angle of resurrection, this is the third wise men, the third most important angle in ancient Egyptology, which is the complementary angle of the Great Pyramid. So January 7, 8, 9, which is Orthodox Christmas, it's 38, 39 degrees. So what this all means, Sacha, is that, in fact, I experienced this in meditation for the last several months, actually, but really strong as Atlas is coming near. The bliss in meditation has gone to extreme levels. So I'm sitting in my chair this morning facing east, and I decide to tilt my third eye at 26 degrees. And the bliss got stronger. And then I tilted it out of alignment and then back into alignment. And I'm starting to see something, because the angle at certain times of the day is pointing somewhere extremely important. It's not just the ecliptic point, because we know that in the sun rising position in the east from the Giza pyramids, we run through Bethlehem, which aligns to the true star of Bethlehem, as George was starting to get into. But we also know in the west at 26 degrees, this is in my earlier presentations, it runs through Fatima, Portugal, where the miracle of the sun happened, which was caused by an eclipse of an unknown planet inside of our solar system that we don't know what it is. So I know what all that is, because I'm studying these angles and mathematical proportions accurately to present that. So 3I Atlas in the next day. So tomorrow it will be on the 19th. It's going to be at 26 degrees. And throughout the last month, it's been perfecting this jet and anti-tail angle at 26 degrees. And then tomorrow it's going to be 26 degrees from Earth. So I would have to say that, yes, it is either an interior potential, which means to meditate on the 19th, the 25th, and the Orthodox Christmas, January 7, 8, 9, are going to be very powerful moments at the very least. What Jenny's saying about what it's going to be doing to the core of the planet and the sun, we're also already seeing that. We're seeing, like, this just happened, and I have a blog on this. We just had the largest single solar sunspot, potential solar flare, bigger than the Carrington event. And as it was coming into view, I said, everybody pray that this thing doesn't blow up, because if it blows up and produces an X47, it could wipe out the internet and the power grids. And to astronomers' astonishment, they had never seen a sunspot this massive, in fact, my entire life. And then smaller sunspots around it were erupting and producing nearly an X-class flare, but the thing never erupted, which is impossible. It's because we interacted with it. The observer that observed said, no, we don't want you to blow us up. And that cycle is now going around behind the sun and will return. And when it does, we'll see, did it shrink or did it get even bigger? So we have a lot of dynamics at play here. We have the magnetic energy, because it is a nickel, manufactured nickel core, which means it could be a magnet, a physical magnet. And of course, Mars has a magnetic core. In fact, we just lost contact with the Mars Maven orbiter on the 4th of December. We still haven't regained contact with it. And the Maven's job is to send back data on Mars's atmosphere. So did it reseed Mars's atmosphere? Is it reactivating Mars's core?
Very interesting piece. When you say a manufactured nickel core, can you just extrapolate for us?
Well, that's Avi Loeb. So Avi Loeb has told us, using spectroscopy in the James Webb Telescope, they know from the spectral colored lines coming off of it what it's made of. I understand spectral lines. I mean, if you've had a psychedelic experience, all those colors you're seeing are the spectral line colors coming off the chemistry in the electrolytes in your body. But so they know that it's Avi Loeb has posted this. It's not naturally occurring nickel that we see in most meteorites, etc. It is a rare type of nickel that can only be manufactured, according to our understanding, which means it's a manufactured object.
Very good. So, Birdie, before we lose you again, thankfully we got you back. You've spoken recently to Avi Loeb. Is there anything worth bringing to this panel?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So this week we had the State of the World Forum, which was an absolutely incredible experience. People from all over the world who were sharing their experiences with extraterrestrial phenomenon. It was an amazing, amazing concept. And Avi Loeb was part of this. And he shared his latest insights into 3I Atlas. And the insights he shared how 3I Atlas is moving in an unnatural way. He shared what 3I Atlas is like, shedding all of these different components, and it all matched up with my remote viewing. Ross Coulthart was the person who was like the moderator for this, and Avi Loeb agreed that what I had described was exactly what is happening right now. So, you know what, Avi Loeb feels that 3I Atlas is a natural phenomenon with unnatural propensities. And you know, as David is describing, as everyone's describing here, yes, these unnatural preponderances are what is actually happening right now. So it's a super exciting time to be alive.
No question about that. I think we'll all agree with that, which is why we all covenanted to be here. But I'm curious, is that Jim Garrison's State of the World Forum?
Yes, it is. It's Jim Garrison's State of the World Forum, which was
how's he doing?
Amazing.
How's he doing?
He's doing great. He's doing great. Oh my gosh, this was incredible. We had people from all over the world convening to talk about what's actually happening with the extraterrestrial phenomenon, what's happening with contact, what's happening with 3I Atlas, all of these things. This past week was instrumental. It was amazing.
I'm just so glad the forum's back on track. I've not had any dealings with Jim Garrison for over 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
No, on global drills, planetary defense, and PSYOP anxiety, we're also seeing synchronized global defense drills, accelerated Space Force exercises, and language around high velocity objects with non-gravitational motion. Do these preparations reflect responsible foresight, or do they amplify fear narratives that distort perception? How should the public discern readiness from orchestration? Does anyone wish to speak to that on the panel? I know that please do so, Birdie. I know that David, being a former I don't know if you're a defense contractor or not, David, but you certainly have a great deal of knowledge in this field, certainly with PsyOps. But Birdie, please take the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've been in this field for 30 years. I was one of the first absolute people who were read into the remote viewing program. I was one of the first civilians taught in this area. And since then, yes, absolutely, yes, what you were saying is true. There is so much information there that's been hidden from the public that even people like me have been instructed to keep from the public, but I have never kept anything from the public. I've always put it out there. And yes. This is absolutely we are in the most important moment of human history, the most important moment of human history right now. We are coming up against the whole idea of, are we alone? Are we alone in the cosmos? I mean, you know what? For your audience here, yeah, we already know we're not alone. But for most of the world, this is not in something that is known. So for most of the world, this is like an incredible revelation. So we are absolutely embarking on this moment where we are not alone. And 3i Atlas is part of this. Absolutely. It's something that is asking us to look at what is possible out there, what is potentially part of our history. And we are looking at who we are. So it's an absolutely incredible moment.
Yeah, for me, I don't know that I've met a single human being who thinks that we're alone, but I must move in very, very close circles. But I believe that there is still a great unwashed out there, so to speak. Oh, that's a terrible thing to say, but of people who are that, I guess, ignorant that still do believe that we're not born of the stars. How should humans observe Atlas? Astronomers emphasize that this object won't be visible to the naked eye, and that its true value may lie in how it tests our models of solar system formation. But beyond telescopes and instruments, how should we as humans be observing this moment? With curiosity, with caution, neutrality, reverence? George, I'd be keen to have thoughts on that.
I like that because it also allows me to answer your question before. And I think we have this choice, if you like, 3D, 5D. I mean, both Edgar Cayce and Dolores Cannon made predictions about this timeline. I think Edgar Cayce made a specific case towards 2025 and the winter solstice. I think he called it a gateway moment. And I think when we are able to hold that frequency of openness, curiosity, we don't go into the fear. And our light codes act very differently to when the alternative is the inverted matrix of the Saturnian system, where we are still, through the louche, kept in that realm of fear. And in a way, that's the difference between Chronos and Kairos. Chronos is linear time. Chronos is obviously the Greek of Saturn. And Kairos is this qualitative time. And we have this choice. This is where we have free will on our planet. Yes, we've been really kept down. Absolutely. Our community understands better than any other community how deep the programming has been from the satanic elite. Notwithstanding that, we still have free will because they have to tell us what they're going to do. And so when we start to see it, we can alchemize that. And so for me, this is an opportunity to learn more about plasma, the four states of water and the four states of the elements of, if you like, earth, air, fire, and water, and then you've got plasma, but also you've got the concept of solid, liquid, gas, plasma. And I see, when I meditate, I see this very much in terms of plasma and water technology. And it reminds me of Darius J. Wright's conversation. I know you've conversed with him, and I particularly enjoyed his conversation on Nino's Corner a week ago or so, because discussing the firmament and discussing what's on the other side, and it's connected to fear, because when we understand that death is totally an illusion, and I actually believe every single star that we see up there is actually a soul incarnate, a soul living, and that's the energy of us in its natural form. It's pure light. And then we come into this lower consciousness, and of course, when you read Dante's Inferno, and you're learning about, and David talks a lot about this, moving through the different levels back into the solid earth. This is what 3D is like. It's jolly heavy. And this is an opportunity for us through the 7 Hermetic principles. You see, I think that's important. In today's world, we've got to reconnect with the esoteric. This is why it's about we the people. It's not the elites of Eton and Oxford studying this and keeping it in our little private chambers. You and I, Sacha, have spoken about this. This is the 7 Hermetic principles being able to be activated by Tom, Dick, and Fanny. The principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration and polarity and rhythm, and what's the other one? Cause and effect and gender, and understanding that we're meant to do the dance between those polarities, not collapse it in the inverted Saturnian way, but actually laugh and joy within it and dance and alchemize with it. And that's when we start to connect with our galactic brothers and sisters, and it's pure joy.
Beautiful. Jenny, any thoughts and comments on that?
Yeah, this is the thing, and I hope you guys can all understand this in a way of the soul. And the universe concept always tells me you need to give your heart out to the collective in a spiritual way, because it has to do with harmonizing the frequency. That's what's happening with this system. It's harmonizing us. It's harmonizing the earth. It's harmonizing the earth's core. So when we stand in the line, we stay in a podium of light, you're going to have the good experience, because there's no fear concept in the mindset. You are not in a process of knowing, well, this is going to kill me, because we don't believe in death. So the ones that do follow that path, they're going to be in fear, whatever they see. And we have the concept of we are literally walking in as light, and we're going through the experience. But I'm telling you, as I tell everybody, put your heart out to the universe like this. And that is a shared concept, because it's all of us together. And the ley lines, everything, the pyramids, all of it's going to come together. And if you look at this in a remote viewing way and you step outside and you see the world now, you see the energy, you see it's changing. And the next thing is coming is the sounds. And they showed me small particles coming from that ship. There's small particles that will come from this abyss of energy that will come to Earth before it even gets close. And that these stasis moments that we are going into, about 30 minutes, we're already getting those downloads from that process. All of this is positive. Nothing about this is negative. You guys know that too, because we would have felt it a long time ago coming into this atmosphere. It's all positive. It's all uplifting. It's just, it's so fearful to the normies. They don't know how to get around this or even put this in their mindset. And so we are standing, holding the line like we're supposed to. And we're all here at the time we're supposed to be here to go through this. And it should be a collective as one.
Beautiful, beautiful. And, redolent of my beloved friend, Roseanne Barr, who I saw a message from her this morning, saying, and she was sent this transmission out to America, essentially, just saying, and she had eyes welled up with tears, and she was just leaning in and saying, things are moving, happening right now, and it's all good. It's all good. It's so profoundly, existentially good what is taking place. Just know that to be true. Now, she's close to the kind of Trump inner circle or what have you, so she's speaking more probably about the white hat type scenario, but it resonated deeply with me, because despite the apparency of calamity in all of our lives, and I know because I speak to so many people, everyone in one way or the other at the microcosmic level is seeing calamity within their own lives, their own ecosystem, their own business, their own, whatever. But despite that, this emergent tone is just too beautiful for words, deeply, deeply stirring. Thank you for that reminder. David, I want to ask you a question here. Steven Spielberg's upcoming film, Disclosure Day, I think it's called. Chrissy's going to play in a moment the clip. It arrives in 2026, this film, and right as conversations around contact, preparedness, and narrative control intensify, the question is, how do films, media, and storytelling shape collective expectation? Are they preparing us Who the fuck is they? Are we being prepared or being programmed for how we interpret moments like Three-Eye Atlas is the question. You can take away the clip, Christy. Thank you.
If you found out we weren't alone, if someone showed you, proved it to you, would that frighten you?
Good morning, Kansas City. Let's take a look at today. Let's today is today's
People have a right to know the truth. It belongs to 7 billion people.
What is it?
You won't believe me if I told you. So I'm going to show you.
What are you gonna do?
Full disclosure to the whole world. All at once.
Well, Steven Spielberg, I mean, sorry, creepy shit in my view. Great filmmaker, but creepy motherfucker. David, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I've watched the trailer a lot. And actually, my wife used to do something like that when she was in these internal conversations with a highly intelligent being. And, it's funny because she looked just like that in the kitchen, and then she would blinking her eyes, and she goes into this state where there's this internal dialogue, which is quite brilliant. I think Spielberg is a brilliant filmmaker. But one of the things, I can show you this. Let me go to share screen. My current situation on Three-Eye Atlas, we're just at the tip of the iceberg about what I've uncovered. The tip. This article in Psychology Today just came out. Why is no one talking about the aliens? And the article illustrates how the movie The Day of Disclosure has come out, and yet it's been on all the major news channels, but how come probably hardly anybody's even seeing it? And why aren't people opening up a really intelligent dialogue about it? And the answer is clear. They're still blocking it. The media has, CNN will put this as a little side Bob story. In fact, they're not talking Three-Eye Atlas at all right now. And Three-Eye Atlas is an interstellar extraterrestrial, meaning beyond Earth visitor. It is, and it's the big one. And if you follow Avi Loeb's blog like I do, because I look at his data and I take his data and I do my own not only mathematical calculations on Loeb's data, but I also know what Three-Eye Atlas's real message is. And we're not even there yet. What I'm sitting on is the mother lode. It's the mother lode. And I'm going to release it probably in first part on Western Christmas Eve, and then Orthodox Christmas. I'm going to, here, let me just show you. Let's just go to the actual Three-Eye Atlas map of the 3D solar system. Let me just show you from outer space what we're dealing with. I just got to find this page. Here we go. So this is the 19th of December. This is Earth, and this is Three-Eye Atlas. In fact, it's going to do this cat and mouse game where if I go to the 20th, and the 21st, 22nd is the winter solstice. Earth gets closer.
Can you zoom in there, David? It's very difficult to see.
Sure, I can zoom in. Yeah, let me just. Is that zooming in? I thought it was. I'm hitting the.
Keep going if you can.
Yeah, but my date is so. Basically, what's happening is it's holding its closest position to Earth, which started way back about the 5th of December. And each day we go forward, Earth gets closer, Atlas gets further. It's changing angle. And I've demonstrated the angles very well. But it's heading for Jupiter right now. And if we go to, let's go to the 7th of January, and I'm going to spin the cursor around, and you're going to see from this position, what do you see? Earth, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all coming into an alignment. Mars, Venus, the Sun, Earth, and Jupiter, which is its real huge mission. I mean, Avilov believes the biggest mission of Three-Eye Atlas is Jupiter. So on the 8th of January, which is Egyptian Orthodox Christmas, which extends to the 9th because there are 2 different times on the planet. So the 7th, 8th, and 9th, it's going to be at the angle of resurrection to Earth, which is the very famous angle. Look at this planetary alignment that's going to happen. And when it gets to, let's go all the way to March 16th. So March the 16th, which happens to be Islam's night of power. In Islam, the night of power is when the Archangel Gabriel appeared to the Prophet Muhammad, who was meditating in a cave, and told him how to recite the first verses of the Quran. So you have an Archangel appearance. The odds of, okay, this is its closest position to Jupiter when the Jupiter spacecraft will be ordered by NASA through Congress to get close-up pictures of it, right? So the timing of this to a major religious date, probably the most holy date in Islam, one of 3, is occurring in coincidence here. And then when we get to, this is to me the big one, when we get to Saturn, July the 22nd, it reaches Saturn's orbit. That's Mary Magdalene's feast day, the 22nd of July. So, and this is where the mother lode starts to appear with Three-Eye Atlas. This is where the mother lode starts to appear. Was that appearing on the screen? Was I getting that?
It's fallen off. The presentation's fallen off.
Yeah, I pulled it off. Okay. So when you understand these angles, let me just pull up this one, which is an actual diagram of a cloth, and this is quite funny. I think it's humorous, but nevertheless, it might be shocking to some conservative viewers. But this was from Robert Temple's book, Egyptian Dawn, which shows the god Osiris laying on his back at 38-39 degrees, and his erection is at the angle of the Great Pyramid. That's because they're complementary angles. But the erection is symbolic of the birth of life, the birth of a god or a Messiah. So this is when you start to get into the real message of Three-Eye Atlas. It has all the symbology, and the angles are pointing to my upper 9 hyperdimensional planets. But these are the angles that Three-Eye Atlas is exhibiting. So when it gets to Jupiter on the night of power in Islam, according to Loeb, now this is the most important presentation on Jupiter he's given us, what we call the Hill radius. So if I take a bowling ball and put it on a trampoline to resemble what gravity does to the fabric of space, this is very Einsteinian 3-dimensional understanding, it creates a well. And the outer edge of the well is called the Hill radius. Loeb demonstrated mathematically that at perihelion, when Three-Eye Atlas was at the sun, it had just pierced the veil of hyperdimensional planet 591 at the same time. It changed its velocity slightly so that it would, when it arrived at Jupiter, it would be there at its Hill radius, which means the perfect place to drop out smaller craft into the orbit of not Jupiter, but Jupiter's moons, where we know there's life, where we know the gods of Jupiter reign from the ancient archaeostructures of the Roman and the Greek emperor, but also the Egyptian, because for the Egyptians, one of their chief gods is Amun-Ra, Jupiter.
That's
So
right.
something magnificent. So this isn't over yet, is what I'm saying. It's not over yet at all.
Indeed.
Because we get to July 22nd, we're at Mary Magdalene, and I have massive iconoclastic news on Mary Magdalene, and the real message of Three Eye Atlas is coming very soon.
That sounds to me like it's got to be a bespoke segment, David. That's very, very interesting indeed. If I know George Lewis well, I know that he has something to say to what you've just said. So, George, you have the floor.
I wanted to also just elucidate a little bit on what's coming up over the next few days. And as David said, the closeness of Three Eye Atlas to the Earth started in early December. I find it interesting to watch how that plays out in earthly terms. So the materialistic Cartesian old control structure is really crumbling. And you see it even expressed in Hollywood. For example, the two sons of those elite Hollywood families murder their parents in the same frequency window. That's, to me, it's not random that. This is a bloodline ritual in a way. And Hollywood families run on contracts and secrecy. And so what's happening here with Three Eye Atlas, the energy of this, especially with Mars in Capricorn, and the negative, Mars in Capricorn, is the satanic bloodline. You see, Mars rules Capricorn. What are we in? We're in the realm of Saturn here. So when the pressure exceeds the container, the distortion doesn't fade. It erupts through the weakest link, the children. And they basically destroy their parents because they've been brought up in that dark frequency. Yes. And so what I'm beginning to see here is, in quantum terms, because trauma is stored in this, basically everything is coming up. The light's being shone on it. And the bloodlines, the old satanic bloodlines, have been revealed, and they're going to be alchemized. So that's what we're seeing now as we move into Capricorn territory. And once we're out on the other side of the bookend, and it goes much further, as David says, but Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the 20th of February is a really important date, because that's when, in a way, Saturn has totally lost his power. So we're going to see a play out of the negative Saturn, the bloodlines, the secrecy, the dastardly events be ramped up over the coming weeks and months. That's the takeaway. Stay the observer. Don't go into the fear narrative. Don't give louche to that. We are not on that timeline. Dolores Cannon said it. Edgar Casey said it. We're saying that. We're choosing a very different timeline.
What was the dateline 0 on the dissipation of Saturnian mythos? What's the dateline that you gave there?
February the 20th is the exact conjunction by the minute, on Saturn, Neptune at the 0 point of Aries. That's the first time that's happened in over 6,000 years. I mean, we're talking not just the cosmic clock of moving from Pisces to Aquarius. This is something bigger, and it's huge.
It's huge what you're saying, George. I'm booking you right now for February for Lazarus. No, we have to do a focus on this. Please, I wasn't aware of that. I know it's 2026 because I don't look at calendars or what have you, but I knew 2026 was dateline 0 for exactly what you're describing. And that's connected to my own kind of cosmology and the stuff I work at. But I didn't understand that it's written in the stars.
Well, we've all got what I love about this, Sacha, is we all feed off each other. I mean, all four of you, you're getting my synapses going, and this is what a healthy civilization looks like. Is we all come towards consciousness from our own perspectives, and it's co-creative as opposed to, I want to control you. The old system is I've got to be better than you. I've got to control you. You've got to think like me. Otherwise it's not going to work. We've all got a piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and this is how we ascend in consciousness, because we all can feed each other, and that's co-creative.
Indeed. And I know you have to leave slightly early. You've got a hard stop. So my final question will go for you, George, is what's up with the hairstyle? You look like Tintin. Did you get a haircut? I had
my first haircut for many, many, many months. I know. I know. I washed it for you, Sacha, so it's a little unkept.
It looks wonderful. George, thank you, brother. Really appreciate you. And if you're going to pair off, you can do so. But you are duly booked for February, so Christy's going to be on your case imminently. Thank you, George. Beautiful. Birdie, I think I saw you gleefully wringing your hands together. Please, you've got the stick. Let me unmute you.
can't believe that we are entering into this whole new timeline for humanity. We are in the absolute biggest moment for humanity ever, 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 ever. We are just about to acknowledge that we are not alone. And in all of humanity, this is the absolute biggest moment. And 3i Atlas is a part of it. Now, is 3i Atlas a big UFO with a bunch of aliens coming to resurrect us, to redeem us? No, it is not. It is absolutely an interplanetary natural object that has echoes of the civilizations that it has come across. And it is these echoes that are teaching us what we need to know. And so we are at this precipice right now with humanity where we're about to acknowledge that we are not alone. This is like so crucial. It's incredible. We have never had this point in all of humanity. And so right now is the most important moment that we could ever possibly experience. And
Very good.
I was just on the World Forum, State of the World Forum with Avi Loeb, and Avi Loeb just explained everything that he was explaining about 3i Atlas, and all of the things that he was explaining I had already predicted in my remote viewings, which was really cool. So
no, we
here
remember
are.
this anyway from the last time with you.
Yes.
But organic and naturally forming phenomenological objet hurtling through the cosmos, and yet at the same time a manufactured nickel core, David.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, I still can't accept that 3i Atlas is a comet at all, and I don't think Avi Loeb does either. I read his blog; he keeps bringing up that it's going to release smaller subcraft on its close approximation to the various planets. So he has to be conservative and play the field between the lines, but I think his personal belief is such. So when we go to the Stanford scientist William Tiller, whom I got to know personally and put in my film The Voice, Tiller at Stanford quantified that coherent consciousness is more powerful than gamma rays, and he did this over and over again in decades of research, which means it can manipulate matter, material form, more than the greatest power we physically understand, which is gamma rays. So if 3i Atlas is exhibiting the perfect timing that I previously demonstrated in all the religious states, crossing the planetary orbits on the way in, and then again here at Mars with Yom Kippur and a Christmas window for Earth, it is likely, if it's proven to be a a natural object, this natural object is then being directed by this infinite power of coherent consciousness. And I started earlier today talking about how much power is coming off a single human being versus it being abject, non-focused to focused. And once you focus consciousness, according to Tiller's mathematical model, it can power a spacecraft. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. In fact, in the Roswell craft, and my friend Boyd Bushman, who had access to the Roswell craft, they didn't find a motor. They didn't find an engine. So if the occupants have reached this state of super coherency, what on William Tiller's scale of coherency and all the biological electrical experiments he presented, what's powering 3i Atlas might be a supreme, highly invisible conscious being, because it couldn't have done the timing and the angles and the perfection that I've demonstrated unless it was conscious. It couldn't. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's a physical engine, even though we see a double vortex twisting out of the nucleus in the X-ray bands, also demonstrated on Loeb's site. So if you go to my Medium page and Avi Loeb's Medium page correspondingly, and I've got way more astounding. Like, we had an amateur astronomer recently use a mathematical astronomy software to show us what the core of 3i Atlas looks like. You should see what it looks like, the real core. We've got it. How much time do we have here? I can show you.
No, that's good. We've got a few minutes left, and I've got a closing
okay,
question.
so let's close. I know what the core looks like, and thanks to this.
Let me bring you in at the very end to close this subject, David, in a few minutes' time. I want to put something to Jenny. If future generations look back at how we responded to Atlas, scientifically, psychologically, and narratively, what would you hope that they'd say that we did right at this moment? And what would you hope we had the courage not to do?
To be humble about the situation, because I do believe the energy that's coming from there, and it's not to look back and say we made a mistake, we left our guard down, and we turned our back on this planet. So what I'm saying, what they realize that we fixed things, we made this world better for them, and we taught them in a better way. And that's where we're going in the future. The conscience of children are going to change in a faster speed. And I believe that everything that has to do with this craft, you want to call it, or frequency, it is about aligning us again, because this is not the first time this has come to this planet. We just weren't here when it happened before. And now it's just reattaching itself the way it did before with everything that is alive on this planet. And it's going to redevelop again. But I do believe this event, as Spirit has always said, is going to make us humble. It is going to drop us to our knees to feel the frequency of love that's coming in. It's a good experience. It's what we need to upgrade into. And everything that's negative is going to dissolve in a dust form. It'll have no power.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny Lee. Birdie, I'm going to unmute you there and invite you to give us your closing comments, thoughts.
Hey, everybody. 3i Atlas is a natural astronomical object. It is not a spaceship at all. It is a natural astronomical object who has been programmed by civilizations across the way, civilizations that want us to know, going back billions of years, who they were to tell us who we are today. This is what 3i Atlas is. It is a harbinger. It is a messenger. It is telling us what we need to know. And it is not like a be-all, end-all. It is simply a messenger that we can open our minds and hearts to. And I'm excited for what's happening. Tomorrow is the day that 3i Atlas is going to be at its closest apex. So I'm looking forward to what tomorrow brings. And at the State of the World Forum this past week with Avi Loeb and Ross Coulthart and others, Avi Loeb said that, yeah, they are looking for these signals of a message. And I am hopeful that they will find it. I am super hopeful. I believe in humanity. I know we're going to make it. I believe in humanity. So love you all. Love you all.
God bless you, Birdie Jaworski. Thank you. David, kindly close this panel for us, brother. You have 4 minutes.
Okay, so here we go. Let's look at the core of 3i Atlas. And this, once again, demonstrates the master architect is the architect of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So skipping through this in my angles, Leanna Dreams is this amateur astronomer on Medium, took this image of 3i Atlas and isolates the core using a software. This is the core. This is not radiating off the core. And we see this polygonal geometry. And I'm in touch with this person. So I took it in to map its angles in the polygon. And on 2 of the 90-degree hemispheres, we have Great Pyramid slope angle here and the angle of resurrection, which is its complementary angle. If you add the 2 of them up, you get 90 degrees. So this is the architecture of two of the most sacred angles that builds the Great Pyramid, which is duplicated on this other side of the polygon in 38 to 39 degrees and just under 52 degrees here for the slope angle of the Great Pyramid. So it's showing at the very core. So this is the physical structure of the core. Again, exemplifying, and again, these articles are worth reading in full to really get the understanding that the master architects of the Giza Plateau is at hand. Is it? I don't think Avi Loeb believes it's a natural comet at all. I've read all of his blogs. I've gone through them very thoroughly. I think he's fighting the mainstream establishment, and he keeps persisting that they're going to release smaller craft. So we could be, in fact, he has Project Galileo, well-funded. All his detectors are operating. The moment these subcraft reach Earth, we'll know, because we've got radar detection to disseminate between satellites and naturally occurring debris and orbits of known satellites and stars and planets. So we'll know when we have a visitor. I don't believe he thinks it's a comet. I don't believe that.
Thank you, David. Thank you. So, friends, if there's one thing tonight is made clear, it's this: different observers are not seeing different things. They are translating the same signal through different filters. And Atlas may ultimately resolve as rock, chemistry, resonance, process, or something we don't yet even have a language for. But whatever the final classification becomes, the more interesting data point may be us. And what we've seen tonight is that perception is not passive. Observation carries weight, and fear accelerates distortion. Jenny was speaking to that, or warning of that. Narrative shapes physiology, and readiness, real readiness, has less to do with defense postures than with clarity, restraint, and coherence. So moments like this test more than our instruments. They test our models and our media ecosystems and our collective nervous system. So the invitation here is not to jump to conclusions, either positive or negative, but to stay present, to stay curious, and to stay grounded while the data unfolds. And whether Atlas proves to be an anomaly, a process, or simply a stress test of our assumptions, how we observe it does matter greatly, because in doing so, we're also rehearsing how we might meet future unknowns together. So tonight, the takeaway is simple. Don't outsource your perception, don't feed fear, and don't rush the mystery. So thank you for being thoughtful witnesses, friends, to this moment, and for holding the question open with intelligence and care. And I want to thank greatly my beloved friend David Sarita, Jenny Lee, and Birdie Jaworski, and of course George H. Lewis. Friends, thank you so very much for joining us on Lazarus today.
Love you all, guys. Love you all.
Take care.
Bye now. Bye now. Bye now. Okay, friends, I think next up, Rebecca Rose turning the spotlight. I think that's the cue for the slide there, Christy, if we have one indeed. So this was, I don't know if this is a conspiracy between Christy and Rebecca Rose. I suspect it is, but this section, I was dutifully informed, was called Turning the Spotlight, and apparently I am the lab rat, and I am the subject under the spotlight today, which suits me just fine, because I'm never happier than when I'm just answering questions. I'm better, I hope, at answering them than I am at asking them. But in any event, I want to welcome Rebecca Rose. Great to see you again.
I'm happy to be here, Sacha. Thank you so much. Yeah. No, there's no lab rats here. Yeah. But it is unusual. Thanks for having me on Lazarus Initiative. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, I'm very, very happy to see you again. And I don't know if we're going to be looking in at the audience comments, Christy. That's a matter for you, but it might be of some interest there. In any event, Rebecca Rose, I am your subject, and you have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much. So the last time we spoke, I feel, over the summer, we talked about way back in 1996, your experiences with a rather large reptilian being and the transformative, and even shocking presence of the I am and the transformative qualities that produced a really different path for you. I mean, over time and distillation of the experience, so many years, that it took to maybe realize that in your life. I'm paraphrasing, but after 96, I feel like we were starting to get into something that happened in 97. August 1st, 1997. I know this is taking us back pretty far, but there was something else that happened on the heels of the experience with the Draco Reptilian. And I was curious of that with the moon. And to lead you into that, I just wondered if you would just share a little bit about what was happening in your world at that time. I know that music was seemed to be moving into something else there, and things were dissolving. There was a threshold for you.
Thank you for this. I really appreciate the question, but it's an incredibly difficult one for me to answer because to be frank with you, I'm kind of covenanted to myself not to speak about this 1997 chapter in my life. But I'm very, very grateful that you were so sensitive as to pick up on that piece that I'd mentioned, because indeed I think it was 96 when I did have that extraordinary interface with what I many years later, certainly in light of the tremendous researchers that David Icke popularized, connected to Draco-Reptilianism or the Chitauri, as the Sangomas or the Zulus would have of Africa. And of course, all cultural narratives include stories of reptiles and feathered serpents and dragons and this, that, and the other. But to be sure, categorically, in 96, I did see one of these creatures emerge in my living room in broad daylight in the middle of the afternoon on a delightful sunny day, whilst I was being interviewed by a journalist who later I worked out pretty much on the day that she'd come in purposefully to act as a catalyst for this diabolical event. And in 1996, I had no conceptual framework to be able to understand what happened, other than the fact that she'd gone catatonic partway through the interview. And as she'd gone catatonic, I sensed this presence, was concerned about her because I thought she was having some kind of a conniptional fit, was about to reach out to shake her, like, are you okay? And then sensed a presence, turned, and then saw this godless creature, like I guess a Tyrannosaurus Rex, leaning in and to all intents and purposes about to eviscerate me, and then hurl myself at a concrete wall to get away from it, which knocked sense into me. And then time dilated in that moment. As you recall, I was speaking about the dilation of time when you're faced with that kind of unbearable, not only existential crisis and compounded fight and flight that hits the chemistry of the body. But another phenomenon occurs, which is a kind of failsafe built or hardwired into the human survival mechanism, and that is the dilation of time, where everything slows down just sufficiently for you to be able to move and get out of the way of whatever it is. So that's a well understood phenomenon that occurs. I suspect it's to people who are more conscious than not that dilation of time happens, much like a Neo in the Matrix, jumping and getting out the way of the flying bullets and all of that stuff. But I know that dilation of time at that moment, in my experience with this Draco Reptilian, was time enough for me to gather my deepest senses or sensibilities in that existential crisis, that moment of not just fight or flight, but do or die. And what happened was I summoned my deepest strength. I believe that was a connection to Atman, the divine will, connected to my purpose in this world at that instant. And I was able to become, in that sense, momentarily omniscient in the experience. So not caught up in, oh fuck, I'm about to be eviscerated by some science fiction that's just come to life in my living room, and there's no one here to witness it and tell my mother I love her because I'm, going to be taken out. I didn't go into any of that. I transpersonalized it, went into a different state of grace or being, and saw that this creature was the sum total. Not only was it my reckoning, but it was the sum total of the entirety of expression in the formation of my soul since soul inception, meaning to say the unresolved aspects of me, of this vessel, of this soul signature. So the entirety of the unresolved aspects of the formation of my soul came from ancient futures into this living moment in the perfect geometry of the living moment in order to catalyze a profound awakening within me, which was precisely that transpersonalized lens of seeing the greater mystery and magic of life. And having then had that experience, reckoning with this creature and not sending love to it in the kind of hippified sense, but certainly looking into its third eye, this kind of, and transmitting to it, I am that thou art. Because that was all that was happening inside of me. I was recognizing that creature was the unresolved aspects of me. It was here to teach me and to bring the entirety of the unresolved shade or contrast in my soul into the living moment, which I had the choice to absolve in one living moment. And that's what I did by best accounts, because I survived the experience. And then threw the bitch out of my room, this female journalist who'd come to interview me, and was very adrenalized after the fact, but took me many, many months to recover, obviously, from that. I couldn't talk about it, couldn't speak about it, because I was already concerned that people thought I was mad. But the point is that was now the more distance in time from the experience, the more of an unbearable grace point I recognized that was in my life. It was an unutterable, ineffable grace point. And I see, and that's also how I learned one of the tenets of the blah blah that I give out is that the devil always serves God's design. And that much was something I learned in that moment. Now, that, having said that, surviving that piece, it led to the next year, 2027. Forgive me, 1997.
1990, yeah.
And something did occur to my life in August of 1997. Thank you for being so gracious as to remember that date. It was the 1st of August, 1997. And that event was indeed a diabolical event. And it was a murderous event of my skirting with evil being the singular absence of love, and the totality of the principle of fear in a living moment. And that I was met with that reckoning on the 1st of August 1997. It was catalyzed by an event, an individual and an event. And again, I don't want to speak to that, if you don't mind, but that event, that relational event moment of it occurring, brought about catastrophic failure of my soul signature. So it's almost as though, looking back on this, I'm talking about, that the Draco Reptilian was an emissary or an agent of the dark come to cause an unholy disruption in my life and in my journey. It failed to do so because I managed somehow to alchemize that experience on that day, at that moment. But a year later, another emissary came in, bringing something in that I couldn't even see coming. It wasn't a big, scary, smelly Draco Reptilian, 11, 12 foot high, crouched in my living room. This was now something that came like the scent of a rose. It came as something beautiful and magical and landed like a butterfly. And then I opened up to it because it was the most beautiful thing that I'd ever received in a relational dynamic, and boom. And then the act occurred, and it was a murderous act. It was something which annihilated me momentarily and caused a death. event in me. The moment that it happened, I remember clutching an amethyst that I had on the fireplace, on the mantelpiece in my living room. And I remember falling backwards, grabbing that amethyst. It was the only thing I could think to do, falling back into my bedroom and falling onto the bed, and with the amethyst placed it onto my, just above my solar plexus here, because something was happening here at that moment. And as I fell onto the bed, a beam of blue light shot out of my, it was above my solar plexus, just above my solar plexus, but a beam of blue light, I guess about yay diameter, came out and shot up through the ceiling. Later, after the fact, the amethyst stone was bleached white. I still have it in storage.
Wow. Yeah.
It was literally after that incident, stone was bleached absolutely white. But that blue light that came out of my solar plexus heart center was in some extraordinary invitation into a conscious death. I was invited to collapse into what was taking place with in a sense, a command structure around me was informing me that I had only one of two choices that I could make. Either way, I was going to die, and I was going to experience the death, the mechanics of the death. I could choose only one differential, which was I could choose to keep my eyes wide open. I'm talking about physical and then psychic eyes during the experience, or I could close my physical eyes and my psychic eyes and, in a sense, try to filter the experience to some extent. And that was on offer to me as I felt myself collapsing into the vortex of this light. And what I did do was determine that after what I'd been through the year before with this draconian reptilian entity and the sheer weirdness that was going on in my life at that time, I determined that I would keep my eyes wide open and I would enter this death gate, eyes wide open. And I did. And it's the only thing I give myself credit for in life. And I mean, the only thing I ever credit myself for is having the courage on that day, momentous courage, to be able to enter into that death experience with my eyes wide open, because I'm naturally skittish and chicken shit and a fearful person. If there's a loud bang, I'm the first person to fall to the ground, duck under the sofa. I'm also the first person to defend and fight and jump into a fire. So I've got that built into me. I protect others, and I will always be the first to jump into the fight and to protect and serve in that way. But my instinct is because of the growing up in a war and loud bangs and things like that, my first instinct is to duck when I hear a loud bang. So I'm naturally skittish and would choose the easy option. But in this case, I chose the hard one, which is to keep my eyes wide open. And I'll tell you, I went into that death. It took me 2 years to recover. By 1999, I recovered. After the experience in 97, I was graciously taken in by a noble woman in Morocco, a beautiful soul, and her family connected to the royal household in Morocco. And I lived largely grace and favor in Morocco, mostly in Marrakesh on and off between 1998 and 1999. And then I, in Morocco, sitting in the beautiful 1,000-year-old palace in Marrakesh one sunny afternoon against one of these beautiful columns, mosaic, 1,000-year-old mosaics, and these huge columns. And I remember sitting in the courtyard with these orange trees and little servant women bustling around with all their, white fabric wrapped around them. And I remember the prince, my beloved Prince Moulay Ali Alaouai, sitting smoking hashish on the other side of the courtyard on the phone to someone. And I remember sitting with my back against this vast mosaic 1,000-year-old column in the palace and feeling this beautiful Moroccan heat. And I remember looking up, and for the first time in my life, and I dare say the last, I said what we all say at some point in our journey, which was, give me a fucking sign. Like,
yes,
give me a fucking sign. Because I'd spent 2 years stewing and resurrecting from the death. that I'd been through, but I still didn't know what my purpose, my mission was in life. I was still living through the echo of my rock and roll, and having bolted out of that and left a number of beautiful souls and talented people very high and dry, for which I feel guilt to this day. But I remember asking, give me a sign. I need a sign now. It's been 2 years sitting in the Moroccan sun mostly. I need a fucking sign. And do you know what happened? A piece of the mosaic fell down off this ancient column and landed at my feet where I was seated, with my bare feet. And I reached and picked up the piece of the mosaic, and it was a geometric shape, a geometric form. And it was fascinating. And I held it. And I took it with me. I thought, I'm going to steal this piece of history from the palace. And I did. I hustled it out. It would have been given to me, but I kept it. And then I studied the piece of geometry after the fact. And it turned out that piece of geometry was an interlocking Metatronic symbol. And it meant the breath of Allah, the compassionate. That symbol then defined my entire journey. The interlocking of these geometric forms, as I understood and then learned about the geometry, became the source code of pure truth, right action, and the entirety of my journey, which is still very much kind of in its formative stages. Even now, in my middle age, I'm entering still into inquiry. But that symbol became a symbol that unfolded and led me to Bali. Actually, it's why I ended up in Bali. That symbol.
I think I heard you say that. Yes, previously. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll leave it at that. But just to say that that 1997 event was diabolical, far, far worse than the encounter with the draconian reptilian creature. But it was also, again, the devil serving God's design, and the beneficence that I received out of that was the source code to my life's mission.
Yeah, well, and you said previously that, the oversoul, the soul orchestrates its own, ascension. So this is all part of that. And what strikes me as you were relaying there about 97 and that eventful day was that you remembered it, that you had recollection is remarkable, Sasha. But I see lots of people in my client practice who have had life-altering touches with the other worlds, as I call them, but they don't remember. So even though it sounds, as it comes through me empathically as you're speaking, and I'm feeling into this whole thing for you so long ago, and yet so present, you have this fullness, even though it was so. You came away with some gold, and I think you've already stated that, but I'm just reflecting. That's one of the most powerful things I got out of what you just spoke so elegantly and eloquently. Yeah. And I could see, years later, not, these things are so difficult to talk about. With my own experience, I am still reckoning with what happened to me, decades ago, with the ritual abuse and these things that went on in my early life with family, extended family. So and I too view these things as almost like the gateway through which I come. In your language, the angelic human, the divine human, I come into my potency as a soul actualized on this planet right now. So this has informed your trajectory in ways that it sounds like you're still reckoning with. How have these brushes with the deeply unconventional and the remarkably almost supernatural informed your belief system? I mean, were you aware of these kinds of phenomena before they actually happened to you firsthand?
So I can tell you that yes, without any question of doubt, the answer to that question is yes, because in the 1980s, as a teenager, I had the most defining experience of my life, and I can't remember the year exactly. I'd have to go back and really forensically reanalyze my history to get the date line. It was late 1980s, and I was in Cologne, Germany. I'd been dispatched out of Africa after the war. I'd been dispatched to England, and I'd spent a few months in England before following a girl who I was in love with, who was a German girl, She was in England with me, and then she'd gone back to Germany, and I forged a passport in order to follow her to Germany. In those days, it was easily enough done. And because I was stateless, I had no passport. I was living grace and favor of Her Majesty in the United Kingdom as a refugee. But I had to follow this girl who I was in love with, and the only way I could do it was use my graphic design skills, and I forged a passport. And in those days, the computers and digitization weren't anywhere to be seen, so it was relatively easy to do. And I did get through, managed to use that temporary passport to get into Germany. And that ended up badly because she ditched me anyway. But I ended up finding myself, and this is where it becomes a bit of a sob story. And if I ever did write this kind of book, this would be a pretty moving or stirring chapter. But I did find myself in Munich in minus 30 odd degrees. It was one of the coldest winters on record. It was snowing. I'd all but been thrown out by the girl who didn't really want to convene a relationship with me beyond a point, given that I was a penniless, broke, long-haired poet, literally just wanting my mother's tit in my mouth. That's all I was trying to do, transferring from my mum's tit to the next girlfriend. That's what most men do until their balls have dropped. And certainly I was caught up in that kind of very stilted young man energy when you're a teenage man trying to grow harder and faster than you're able to. But there I was in boots that had a hole in the right foot, trudging through the snow with less than 10 pounds sterling in my pocket, and in Munich. And I had no idea what to do. And I knew I had only the forged passport and not even the means to get back to England. And it was a ghastly, ghastly night. And it was very late, must have been close to 11 p.m. And I was walking through a place called Schwabing in Munich. And there was a pub open. And I went in to get myself warm, not to spend my last money on anything to eat or drink, but I went in to get warm, and was grateful at that. And I noticed that there was a man playing pinball in the corner with a long camel trench coat on, and he had long, beautiful dreadlocks. And he was playing this incredible animated pinball. And I went up behind him just to watch how he was doing it with such dexterity. He stopped instantly. He turned around and he looked at me squarely. He had the most beautiful black dreadlocks and this long camel trench coat, this ancient, beautiful face. And he said my name. And he said, "Are you ready for work? Are you ready to work?" And he said it in a stern way. And my heart completely fell out of my body because, A, how the fuck does he know my name? And what does he mean, am I ready? Yes, I've never been more ready in my entire life. And this beautiful soul, whose name was Otis Lee, ended up taking me under his wing that night. He was a mystic. He was an extraordinary adept. He could do remarkable things, miraculous things. I saw him on, I think, two occasions levitating when he went into his practice. He was strict with me. He was very physical with me. He would wrestle me and fight with me. I was with him for the best part of a year, being trained by him in the work, as he called it. He took me around. We traveled to various countries by road, and he taught me so much in that period of time. He taught me about the Hermetic sciences, Hermes Trismegistus. I was steeped in the knowledge of the Hermetic sciences by him, all the way through to Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical premise as well, and beyond. And on one at the end of my learning curve with him, I went through a ghastly experience where I became demonically possessed for a couple of weeks, a few weeks. I think, I can't remember exactly. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. And when I say demonically possessed, what I mean was I got taken over by some force. he had to take me back to his home in The Hague in Holland, where he was a black man from Paramaribo in Suriname. And he took me to his mother, and she was an old, beautiful woman who took me into the house. They had no electricity. It was just kerosene lamps and lights in that house, and cooking on a Bunsen stove. And I ended up being looked after by his mother and his immediate family, whilst he went off to consult a group of wizards that he trained with to try to get me depossessed or whatever. So in the period that he was gone for a couple of weeks, it was arguably the worst experience of my life in terms of protracted period of time, because over those couple of weeks, the only way I can describe it was I was being picked up and bodily spun backwards constantly. Just constantly spinning, and never being allowed to rest from that spinning motion. So I could stand up and walk and be fed and move from one room to another room with help, but it felt like I was spinning backwards, and I was just completely had no command over my being. So psychically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, I was under endemic assault by demonic forces that, by best accounts, were trying to get in, but I was preventing that atom seed from being surrendered to them. So that meant that I was caught up in the dialectic. I was caught up in the battleground. And the battle continued for a couple of weeks. He came back eventually and performed an exorcism of sorts. There's a lot more to the story, which is fascinating, to do with disembodied spirits, which I was seeing and communicating with. In particular, one beautiful 22-year-old dead girl who apparently, we found out after the fact, had died in the apartment above where we were 2 years earlier. But I was seeing her and conducting a full relationship with this dead girl. Beautiful, beautiful girl. And when he came back and did this cleansing, that was the only way that I could get out of this apartment, because prior to that, I couldn't leave the apartment. It felt like I was firewalled. If I tried to get out of the apartment, I wasn't able to physically cross the threshold without blacking out and choking. So I had to stay in this apartment surrounded by those spirits, especially the spirit of that dead young girl. And I understand now why that was happening. But the bottom line is, when he came back to do the dispossession, whatever you call it, after that ceremony that he conducted that evening, I was able to breathe. The marks and the scars and the welts all over my body disappeared. The claw marks, all of that shit, that fairly normal shit that happens in situations like that, all disappeared. And he took me that night out of Holland, took me straight to Germany by road. And I remember in the morning we arrived in Cologne in Germany, and he was exhausted because he'd been driving me out. He had been told he had to physically get me away from Holland, from that location where I'd been possessed or stricken. He also explained to me, incidentally, that the bolt had come at him from people who'd wanted him dead in Southern America, but the bolt had missed him and hit me. To harm me. It was not intended to harm me particularly, but because it couldn't hit him, the energetic force, it hit me, and that was what triggered the possession, apparently. So nonetheless, we're in Cologne now, in Germany. He's exhausted and tells me he's got to go and do his practice, and he puts me into a room. We're in a safe house, a house connected to the movement that he was involved with in his beautiful practice. And I was sent to lay down in a room whilst he went for a 2-hour, 3-hour practice. And I remember lying in that room, exasperated, because I'd just come out of this 3 or 4 weeks of possession and this ghastly experience. And I was trying to understand what had happened. And I was trying to understand how all these marks and growths and things had disappeared off my body instantly. Like, what kind of magic happened? I was deeply grateful that I was no longer spinning and had this awful psychic assault going on. And the next thing that happened in this bedroom, in this house in Cologne, is this host of angelic beings appeared and pulled me out of my body and allowed me to play with them. they imbued me with song and with music. I became a composer after that experience. I hated music up to that point.
Okay.
I asked my mother, my sister, I never listened to music as a child. I couldn't bear it. They were music fundies. I couldn't sing. I couldn't anything. After this experience, which lasted less than an hour, maybe 2 hours, engaged with these angelic beings, I could compose. I could more or less read and write music as well, not in the classical sense, but I had a complete understanding, symbiotic connection with it. And I became a singer, a musician, performer. That was my life the next 10 years. My music was all inspired through that instant activation through these angelic beings. But the most important thing, and I'm going to end it here, is that these angelic beings, and I remember that experience as if it happened earlier today. It'll never, ever leave me. It's utterly burnt like a holy stigmata into me. And what these voices were filling me with in music was they were imprinting me with a knowledge about ascension, about the mechanics of ascension. And the way that they were allowing me to experiment with the understanding of ascension was they were allowing me to move my star body, because I was with them. My physical body was there lying on the bed. My star body was engaging with these angelic beings. And it was beautiful. It was my same body and face and everything, but it was made up of billions and billions of pinpricks of light. And it was so beautiful being in the state. And it was all sound and frequency, engaging with these beautiful beings. And they were laughing. They were so loving and benevolent and kind. And they were saying, look, we're giving this is your theater, play, enjoy it. And go work out the distinction between the star body and the physical body. So I was able to literally morph in from the physical to the star and feel the inverse and the obverse elements of those mechanics of ascension and descension. And then at a given point, they said, okay, khalas, it's over, back into your body completely now. We're leaving. And I was like, no, you not leave me. And it was worse than being separated from my mother for a year at the age of 7 or 8, when I was torn off her tit for a year and didn't see her. It was worse than that. And they were leaving, and they allowed me to fall back into my physical body. So I had to take my star body back. And the last thing they allowed me to do was to witness my star hand fall into my physical hand right in front of my eyes. But they allowed my physical eyes to open and witness the star body and play with the mechanics of ascension, even with my physical eyes. Now, that to me was the key piece. That was where I understood without any question of doubt that ascension was to be a biological process for humanity. It was a biological phenomenon that is going to be occurring. It's not a psycho-spiritual one or something that's going to happen out there and pull us out. It's a full-bodied, material, 3D ascension, and we're going to feel it physically morphing into that star, the star body, so to speak. In any event, I'm going to leave the story at that, but that for me was the most defining experience of my life. And that's also what gave me, I think, the imprint of grace to deal many years later with or 10 years later, thereabouts, with the draconian reptilian event, and then with that ghastly death event that I described to you. And I think that's what came through.
Yeah, so this was all, I hear you now chronologically. This was preceding to the reptilian and, 96, 97. This was prior to, 10 years prior. So, wow. And remarkably, again, when you shared this, it was so vivid, and I could really feel all that moving through me. And I thought, oh, God, again, you've remembered it and conveyed it so adeptly. It's like bringing back a treasure from those other worlds is what you've done. Those who walk between worlds journey to that other place and bring back the news, so to say, and the wisdom and the love, the frequency of all that's in us that we have forgotten.
Yes.
You conveyed that beautifully. Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm sober. It's why I never touched anything my entire life. I've never touched alcohol. I've never touched marijuana or mushrooms. And I love marijuana and mushrooms. I just love it around me, and I love the smell. I love people enjoying these experiences. And I have a lot of experience of witnessing and living and working amongst people on 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 heroin and on cocaine and on everything you could imagine. So it's not that I'm green to the culture and the tonality and the frequency of these things for good or for ill. I'm very familiar with them. But I've just never participated myself one iota. And so that abject and stark sobriety, I think, has also, to some great extent, helped me maintain a very even keel and yet still have the most extraordinarily transcendent and out of this world experiences. So they've not precluded me from having remarkable experiences, being sober.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as you were relaying those weeks of possession, let's say, did you die?
Technically, with the death event that occurred in my life in 1st of August in 1997, it lasted technically about 2 weeks. I was largely gaga, being looked after by a couple of very dear friends who were more or less spoon feeding me at the time. And but I can tell you that I did travel to the moon. That's the only way I can put it. I remember explaining this to David Icke in my living room in about I can't remember, it must be about 15 odd years ago. I remember telling David Icke this story, that when this death event happened to me, I was transported to the moon. My psyche literally found itself on the far side of the moon. And I reckoned at that time that the moon was a foreign object, that it was a hostile object, a foreign object, but a very necessary one, and one that had come in to augur great teaching in the realm of duality for humanity and for all of this universe, in point of fact. And I spent what in linear terms was about 2 weeks in the moon, learning a language is the only way I can put it. And it's the language of the dark side of the moon. And again, that's the only way I can put it, because it was an ineffable language. And it was something that was, I guess, a hybrid of tone and geometry. And that language is quite possibly some off-world ET language, and maybe I'll completely be able to reconstitute that language in days ahead. But I can tell you that after 2 weeks being disembodied, and off-world, I did glean what I needed to glean, and then I started to make a movement back to Earth, and my entire psyche, as though it was my physical, causal, astral, spiritual eyes, were all part of that journey back to Earth. And I knew I was heading back to Earth, back to my allocated home planet for now. And as I was moving back toward Earth, the planet Mercury came, and I could see it coming from the right, and it stopped and blocked my passage to Earth, which was very curious. And I was unable to move. I was unable to move until I decoded something, which I did decode, and then Mercury moved out the way, and then I was able to continue toward Earth, and I could see my beautiful planet, home planet Earth, coming. And as I was moving closer toward it, I started to observe a horrendous, the most awful apocalyptic scenario. I could see the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere were becoming separated. It was almost as though there was a wound around the hemisphere of the Earth that was fizzing and cracking and popping and bubbling, almost like a bloodied, fizzing wound. And as I came closer to Earth, I could see the two hemispheres were being separated interminably through this bizarre kind of cosmic chemistry. And then as I came closer, I saw that the northern hemisphere was a sleeping king, a vast, epochal, kind of King Wenceslas type, fatted, satiated, gluttonous king, sleeping and mumbling and muttering. And he took up the entirety of the northern hemisphere. And he was quite disgusting. And he was completely preoccupied with whatever was going on in his own mind. But he was kind of chomping and asleep. And I saw the southern hemisphere was awakening, and she was beautiful. And she was feminine. She was the emergent goddess. And she was beautiful, and she was dark, and she was fucking terrifying. and she was inexpressibly beautiful and powerful, and she was awakening, and I could see her awakening. And then I heard her say, "Hear me, my Lord," or "Hear me, my King, my husband, forgive me, hear me, my husband." And I was hurtling still closer towards the earth, and he kept on muttering as though he was sleeping and snoring and turning over. And I was like, "Dude, wake up, trust me." And then she said it a second time. She said, "Hear me, my husband." And he was still asleep. And I was starting to scream and say, "Wake up, man, wake up. She is speaking. Listen to her. She is speaking." And she said it for the third time. She said, hear me, my husband, or I will make myself heard." Those were the exact words. And at that moment, he continued to sleep. And then I saw this unfolding apocalypse. I saw the 9/11. I saw all of these god-awful events occurring on the earth. And it was a very kind of a sort of pastiche of Nostradamus type images, some of which I could understand, others I couldn't. And this was 1997. Okay. This was some years before 9/11. So I descended, came back into my body, boom, and I was embodied. And what I did was then went to Morocco. I was rescued by this noble woman in Morocco. It's a beautiful story. And her family, she was a seer, an oracle. She'd come to England to look for me. She'd seen a video of mine on MTV. And she had got on a plane and gone to London to find me. She was some kind of oracle, and she found me. My music manager called me and dragged me to see her in a hotel. And when we were alone, she was like, "Habibi, Habibi." And I said, "Madam, it already happened." And I said I was already killed. And she was, "Allah, wallah, wallah," because she'd seen that something diabolical was going to happen to me. And she said, "Sacha, the creature that killed you was an entity that's come to this world in order to kill select men at this age, and you were the target. You were a prime target." And I said, "Well, I've survived. Here I am." And she took me. She said, "You're coming with me," and she took me to Morocco. And I ended up for 2 years largely being looked after there. Now, and then resurrecting from there. But the point being that it took me 2 years to resurrect from that experience of the death and the lunar thing and the coming back to earth and the prophecy shit that was embedded into me. 2 years to assimilate the language into coherence, some measure of coherence. And then I went back to England, to Cronus, the Crown. I registered Humanitad Foundation, my foundation, and I knew my work then had to bridge the South and the North, the hemispheres. But so I knew that my work had to now go full tilt into merging the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. But I didn't know how, what, when, where, or why. So I started to study Islam, because I also had seen in that prophetic kind of pastiche, I had seen that the Islamic world was going to be under savage attack by the Saturnian Judeo-Christic world. That's not to say that the Judeo-Christic world is satanic. It's just to say that the deeply embedded aspect of Satan is absolutely embedded within the Judeo-Christic echelon. There is an echelon that is nested within the beautiful Jewish faith and the beautiful Christian faith, and it's taken root there for hundreds of years. That is actually the 500-year hegemony of the crowns of Europe, becoming governments, becoming the dragnet of enslavement of humanity, the doctrine of discovery, the Vatican conspiracy, the fucking IMF and the BIS and the World Bank, and the whole godless system of registering human souls and licensing bicycles and homes. All of that tabulation, fictionalizing, securitizing of the living sons and daughters of God is the great crime of ages. So I could see that in that prophetic vision. So I knew that I had to come in and create some kind of bridge between North and South, between Judeo-Christian mindset and the Islamic mindset. And so I set about studying Islam and became very adept as a scholar of Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi, and Maliki, the schools of Islam. And then I used that as my the turnkey for my diplomacy that I started doing for many years. And then Humanitat did its work, and that led to ultimately the New Earth project. Once I learned that what I needed to learn through diplomacy and through international relations and all that crap, I then understood I had to build the model, and that New Earth had to become the living template. And so I morphed away from foundation work, diplomacy, and deep research into disclosure and into refining the template for humanity, which is what the New Earth Project, New Earth Initiative was. And that's led to the New Earth Nation, and that's led to what we're about to unveil in 2026. And believe me, we've been through hell in the last few short years, our organization and the beautiful constellation of souls within it. But it is an alchemy. It's a work in progress. Most of the people who work with me haven't the faintest fucking idea about what this is. Some are just kind of, fulfilling function. Others have more of a spiritual attunement to the greater work. I am master and commander of what it is that I'm doing, and I have a very, very clear mission. And that's where you meet me today in the Lazarus initiative, which is part of that process of resurrecting ourselves and creating that narrative that can bring many souls from around the world into this convention of the new fellowship. And this is not a new religion I'm talking about. I'm not talking about something cultish, which is why I drop F-bombs all the time, because I do not want to be mistaken for being some kind of a spiritualized icon. I couldn't be further from that, but I'm very crystal clear about being the Adam and about being the living son of God, as all my fellows men are, and daughters of God. So that's where you meet me today in the Lazarus Symposium.
Thank you. I mean, your clarity of recall, as I've said, is crystalline, and so is the mission with this. And without which, without these experiences, not able to, maybe you had to have this initiation. And maybe that's the message to others today, is like, as I hear you, it's like, oh, when we have these rogue moments, so to say, they're not rogue. And rogue is a diplomatic word. That's moderate. But when we are brought beyond the veil and we don't know what the fuck just happened to us. I mean, I had a week ago today, I had an experience in which I was taken over by small parts who had experienced extreme abuse, and I did not have control of my body, and I was terrified. I wish I had it on film, because it's such a record of what we go through. That is, I use that word supernatural in a way. It's quantum in nature. It brings us closer to death, but also closer to God. I can only say that about it. But I had at some point, maybe half an hour ago, I was kind of having, tearing up a little bit with the passion of these experiences, that so often we have such cognitive dissonance and such conditioning and programming to never speak about them, that we might go crazy, not from the experience, but we can't speak to it in language, and
Yeah.
so it's such a great service in just sharing that with such vivid recall, and the message and hope that it gives us about the anomalies that occur. Don't file them away, sit with them, be with them. And if you experience a death, and all the better, because you will transform. Yeah,
Indeed.
thank you so much. Yeah.
And I'll say this, that to what you've just been saying, I in my touring, certainly in the last 2 years, the opening gambit of my 3-hour lecture is an acknowledgement to whoever's in the audience, and it's not false modesty, but what I am saying every time to every audience is the importance of who they are. Every individual in the room, I happen to know, is a magnus opus, is a story of inexpressible majesty, that every single one of us, even and possibly especially the more mundane amongst us, are still containers of the most extraordinary stories imaginable. But the degree to which most people are prepared or not prepared to speak their story, to speak their deepest truth, that becomes a travesty, that becomes a great sadness. But I honor every single human being that I meet in the truest tradition of Om Swastiastu, of Om Shanti Shanti, of I am that thou art. I do always acknowledge strangers, every stranger in the journey of my life. I've done it a dozen times today, meeting some of the servants in this beautiful bush lodge, and just acknowledging that behind the eyes of every one of these souls in this world is an incredible story. And it's just my hope that people not can all tell their stories, God forbid. I've not really told my story until now. I start to speak to it only because I think that I have a duty of care to, because I've spoken so much on so many subjects for so long now, that I think to help some people contextualize the shit that comes out of my mouth, I do feel honor-bound and obligated to answer very truthfully to very, very difficult questions. I mean, all of these questions that you've asked me are difficult ones that would, normally speaking, one would avoid, and step away from. And I think all too many people are withholding and stepping back from speaking their highest truth and the majesty of their story. So at some point, each of us are feeding, I guess, into the greater group narrative. And what is that saying that every single soul, none of us get to heaven if one of us don't get to heaven? I actually foundationally believe that to be true.
Yes. And you've said it in a different way, as I've said it to myself in this past week, since I had this very I don't have English language words for it, but that I am transmuting something here for the collective, and I had to go into that otherworld to bring something back. I'm clearing something, as you were with this, for lack of better words, that possession, so to say, the dark forces coming in. It's like we're transmuting something for more than just Sacha, for more than just Rebecca. Something much greater is going on, and I think that's what's tipped me off in this whole journey of mine, and to understand why do I need to have to go, why do I go through this, and what am I bringing back? There's something here, and it's not just for me.
Yes.
So you speak very well to that, and I hope everyone listening can gather something, the gemstones and pebbles on the beach from their own journey, and the stones in their pockets, and there's something beautiful there. That's what I hear you saying.
Well, indeed, but there's a huge distinction between the story that we want to tell ourselves about ourselves, the story we want to tell the world about ourselves. Now, that's the false light narrative that most people are fucked up by and are caught up in, and that's the mask and the performative me, the ego me, the look at me, I'm fucking amazing, look what I can do, I can tap dance, mummy, please give me the applause, give me limelight, give me money, give me fame, give me sex, give me stuff. That parasite, false light gleaning aspect, the egoic form in the human, is a uniquely ugly and unattractive aspect, and that's the one I don't like. I don't like makeup. I don't like baubles anymore. I don't like performative shit. I don't like masks. I don't like look at me, look at me. That's so unattractive. Like beautiful, naked, vulnerable, raw, integrated, authentic humanity is the most majestic, powerful, ineffable force in the universe. That creature I am so in love with, and in a place like Malawi, where I am right now, and in Africa, with the stink of the place in so many parts, the wretched poverty and destitution notwithstanding, the glowing heart of these people in that fragile modesty is something that just really brings tears to my eyes. I mean, being on this ship 2 days ago, sailing to the Likoma Island in Lake Malawi, which is like almost 600 fucking kilometers long. So it was a day and a half sailing on a rust bucket with almost 800 souls on it. It should have only been taking about 300. A ship that's almost 100 years old and shouldn't have been shipped. It should have been taken out of service, 40 years ago. It's a death trap. and we were squeezed onto this boat, had to get onto it. And I found myself about 48 hours ago being pushed onto the boat from the fishing boats that we were clawing our way up the ship into the ship, being pulled in. It's like a cage in the lower deck, and you have to be pulled in. And there's literally 500-600 people crammed in there in a place that should only take 150 on that deck or 120. And we couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The stink was unbelievable. And then being pushed through these people, being pulled through. It was literally swimming through people, over them, around them, to get to the stairwell, to be pulled up to the upper deck. And I'm having this extraordinary experience. I was describing it a little bit earlier on to the panel at my introduction to the symposium this evening. But it was such a seminal event for me because I'm very claustrophobic, like most people are. And the idea of being caught in this throng of people, and there were more people onboarding the ship, so it was getting denser and denser. We literally couldn't breathe. I was literally trapped with eyes and faces and bums and tits and everything all around me. Couldn't breathe. I lost sight of my colleagues who were literally 20 centimeters behind me, lost sight of them because it was crushed in the people. And I'm thinking to myself, this is just a snapshot of the dark continent. This is happening in a million different venues right now in Africa, in Central South America, and Southeast Asia, in parts of the world where the disenchanted, the disenfranchised are having to survive in an impossible environment with no money and no food in their belly. And it was just so traumatizing, the experience, but it was so beautiful. It was so terrifying. And I remember stilling myself in this panic and going, this is perfect. This is perfect geometry. I must see this if I'm to come to Africa with the New Earth Initiative and do the work that we're doing at the governmental level, at the level of royalty that we're engaging with. And I must see this. I must feel this heat, this depravity, this stink. And I did. And I slept in a rat-infested, cockroach-infested, urinated cabin that stunk. It was the worst night of my life, without any question of doubt. And in a way, it was the most edifying, because I was so grateful at being forced into having the worst possible experience of Africa, just as we're about to create this extraordinary initiative in the place for the upliftment and upshift of these incredible people after 500 years of satanic takeover by the imperial forces of the West. So I'm going to leave my little rant at that, but just to underscore the fact that everything is perfect, and the good common human being, the raw, authentic, unmasked human being, is the one that describes the meek who are about to inherit the earth.
Sacha, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your vulnerability today and bringing the lens back to Africa and what's happening on the planet and off world as well. We've wrapped up a lot here in our time together. I appreciate you diving deep and also bringing these stories forward in a way that it feels, to me as I listen, kind of destined, because you do, as I said, have such recall, and that benefits everybody listening. So what a pleasure to be here and to really hear all this from you.
God bless you, Rebecca Rose. Thank you. It was lovely seeing you again. Thank you, Christy, as well. And to the audience, I'm going to bid you adieu. I have an early morning rise before we drive to Zambia through the bush. Mwah! Thank you.
Goodbye.
Well, Lazarus, what to say? Sitting here as I am in the middle of the bush, and I mean in the middle of the bush. It was about 6.5 hours drive to get here 2 days.